As a historian and a longtime US history teacher, watching what's happening in DC and also in LA, but specifically DC, I can't help but be reminded of Boston, 1774. This is definitely one of those things that you learned in your US history class, and you probably had to like put on a timeline of events leading up to the American Revolution, and you're like, when am I ever going to need to know about the Intolerable Acts? And it's like, now, babe, now you need to know about the Intolerable Acts. Now, before anyone comes in the comments, I know they're different. I know they're different. I know it's not identical. I'm just saying what I'm seeing in DC is reminding me of what I've taught about of what happened in Boston. So we had growing resistance to the authority of the tyrannical king, right, for over a decade, 1763, end of the French and Indian War, even you could argue before that. But really, it's in the mid 1770s when things start to really pop off, especially in Boston. That's where, of course, you have the Boston Tea Party, which I could go on a rant about how it's actually not about what you think it's about, but for now we just need to know that the Boston Tea Party happened. It really pissed off the king and the crown. He kind of encouraged, and Parliament passed these intolerable acts. That's what the Americans called it. They were the coercive acts, which isn't much of a better name. Now, they included 5 acts, and really, like, what we generally need to know is that it basically just stripped the Massachusetts colony of its right to rule itself and said, hey, you're now going to be directly ruled by the crown, and it dramatically increased the presence of redcoats, of British military, especially in the port city of Boston. Now, I think you could really argue that this is the first real move on behalf of the British in what's going to become the Revolutionary War, right? It's really important to remember that revolutions actually come on fairly slowly. You don't look around and go, the revolution has started. It's like by the time you realize it, you've been in it for a pretty long time. But this is really one of those first kind of chess moves. And what the British hoped is that they hoped that it would isolate. They thought, well, the revolutionaries are really only in Boston and kind of the Northeast. We're going to isolate them, and everyone else is just gonna be like, well, we don't want that to happen to us, so we're gonna submit to the king. And of course, the exact opposite happened. Stripping the Massachusetts colony of its right to self-government and dramatically increasing the military presence just pissed off all of the other colonies and actually gave them something to unite over. This is when we really start to see the rise of these so-called committees of correspondence, basically people sending letters, leaders from different colonies starting to connect with each other through the writing of letters, which is kind of adorable, right? They started to connect and say, hey, what we're doing over here is really similar to what you're doing over there, and maybe we should work together. It also, of course, these committees of correspondence and this beginning of like creating this sort of national network, whereas before the resistance had been very localized, also, of course, leads to the First Continental Congress in 1775.